How's it going, everybody? Today's Saturday, February 5th, 2022, and there has been a whole lot of coaching news happening this week. So I figured I would do a video covering everything so you can get a rundown of who's been hired where and what vacancies are now open at other positions due to these changes. The first big one I wanted to cover was Seattle finally hired a defensive coordinator. After firing Ken Norton Jr., who had been a trusted assistant for Pete Carroll for many years before this, he decided to promote within. Despite interest in bringing the Vic Fangio system to Seattle, he did not actually target Fangio himself. He instead went for somebody who worked under Fangio in the past, who was already on Seattle's staff. That is Clint Hurt, the current defensive line coach for Seattle, who has now been promoted to defensive coordinator. Hurt has more or less been Pete Carroll's right-hand man on defense outside of Ken Norton for the past 4 seasons, serving as assistant head coach. It's not quite known yet if he'll continue to serve as assistant head coach or if Pete Carroll will find somebody else in that role, perhaps even Fangio himself. Um, Hurt brings a lot of experience to the defense. He's coached defensive linemen and linebackers. He served under Vic Fangio as the outside linebacker coach in Chicago when Fangio was the defensive coordinator, which is where Carroll gets the idea of hiring him for the coordinator position, having worked with Fangio in the past. Carroll's also expected to bring on Fangio's right-hand man, Ed Donatel, who served as the defensive coordinator with Denver in 2021, but will serve as a defensive assistant slash senior analyst for Seattle into 2022. I'm unsure why he didn't decide to just target Fangio himself. Maybe he doesn't feel very secure in his position as head coach after a poor season, and he doesn't want a guy on staff that could potentially replace him if things go sour in 2022. That would be a foolish choice on his part because honestly, I don't think Fangio is going to be able to get another head coaching position. Sure, he could be an interim candidate should they decide to fire Carroll midseason, but I don't see them replacing Pete Carroll with Vic Fangio for any reason whatsoever. Despite all this, they decided to hire within, and Clint Hurt got the job. Moving on to Buffalo. Buffalo, as we all know, just lost their offensive coordinator to the Giants, who hired Brian Daboll to be their head coach for the 2022 season and hopefully develop Daniel Jones into something special. Well, Buffalo obviously had a vacancy at offensive coordinator due to this, and the incumbent in-house that was expected to be promoted has been promoted after all. That's Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey has served as the quarterback coach for several seasons now under Brian Daboll and helped develop Josh Allen into what he is today. He is a former NFL quarterback himself that was drafted in round 7 and played in 6 NFL seasons and 1 year in the CFL as well. He retired in 2010 and immediately went into a front office role as a scout with Carolina for the 2010 and 2011 seasons. Believe it or not, he moved into serving as an athletic director for Florida International University for 1 season in 2012. In 2013, he returned to Carolina, this time as a quarterback coach, serving under head coach Ron Rivera, while Sean McDermott was the defensive coordinator. He was immediately hired as the quarterback coach with Buffalo when McDermott took the job there and added the passing game coordinator title in 2021. He's got 8 years of experience coaching quarterbacks specifically, and he will move into the 2022 season as the new play caller for Buffalo. With there being now a vacancy at quarterback coach, the hire has been Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator from Carolina for the 2019 and 2020 seasons, who became the scapegoat in Carolina despite injuries to various key position players. This was a very smart hire by Buffalo in the sense that this gives them somebody to potentially replace Ken Dorsey if Dorsey gets interest as a head coaching position or for head coaching positions going forward, which I expect him to when Buffalo continues to contend for years to come. Ken Dorsey is obviously a very fresh mind in coaching, but he's also been around the NFL for many years. He is definitely getting the benefit of the doubt based off his playing career in the NFL, despite the fact that he was never a prominent quarterback. They're basically more or less assuming that he can come in and call and run an offense after only knowing the quarterback position. It should be an interesting move for the 2022 season, but I do expect him to find success. I mean, how could you not with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs on that offense? Moving on, um, the Bears hire defensive coordinator Alan Williams, as well as several other coaches at the same time. Alan Williams actually got his start as a high school head coach. Or sorry, not head coach. He was tasked with running backs, DBs, and served as assistant head coach from 92 to 95. In 1996, he moved on to William and Mary, where he served as the running backs coach for the 96 and 97 under seasons under head coach Jimmy Laycock, who actually coached with William and Mary for 38 years. He moved to the defensive side of the ball in 98, where he would remain from 98 to 2000. He only then left because he got an offer to jump into the NFL under head coach Tony Dungy with Tampa Bay. Tony Dungy was then let go by the Buccaneers following the 2001 season, and subsequently, Alan Williams was let go as well and followed Dungy to Indianapolis, where he became the head coach again. He stayed with Dungy until the '08 season when Dungy retired and passed on control to Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell, where Alan Williams stayed afterward in the same role. He was coaching defensive backs the whole time. In 2012, he joined Leslie Frazier in Minnesota as his defensive coordinator, where he spent 2 seasons until Frazier was fired, as well as the rest of his coaching staff. Frazier was was garnering attention again as a head coach this cycle, and there was speculation that Alan Williams could potentially join him as defensive coordinator once again. However, Matt Eberflus gets his guy before Frazier can get a job and hire him away. Um, After serving as the defensive coordinator in 2013, he latched on with the Lions um, as a coach as well. He served there from 2014 to 2017 before joining Matt Eberflus in Indianapolis, where he served as a defensive back slash safety coach um, since 2018. He's been with Eberflus in Indianapolis since he's been a coordinator, so it only makes sense that he would be his right hand man that he turns to when he gets a head coaching job. That's kind of generally how these things work, and it makes a lot of sense. Although I would say that I was expecting Eberflus Tolbert to target a more veteran coach on that side of the ball, but it makes sense to bring in somebody who knows his system. Eberflus claims that he will not be calling plays, and he wanted somebody that he could trust to run his system and still call plays in that scheme. Williams is that guy. Not only did he bring along Williams, he brought along two other Indianapolis coaches in Dave Borgonzi, who takes over as linebacker coach. This is the same role that he served with Indianapolis under the Eberflus for the last 4 seasons. Before that, he was in Tampa Bay with Lovie Smith and Leslie Frazier, once again, a name that keeps popping up among these coaching hires here. Worked with Eberflus in Dallas for 3 years, 2 on the defensive side and 1 on offense as a defensive assistant and offensive assistant. And 2011 is when he first got his start in the NFL. Prior to that, he was coaching defensive backs for Harvard for 3 seasons. He only began his coaching career in 2006. That's only 17 years of coaching at this point, and this is a fairly young staff going into the 22 season. But many of these guys have been coaching together for a while, and they should have good chemistry and good awareness amongst the scheme that they're trying to run, which should help their transition to the roles that they find themselves in 22. The third coach that came over from Indianapolis was actually David Overstreet II. That name might sound familiar because his father actually came into the NFL in 1983, the same year Dan Marino did with the Miami Dolphins. His father, in an unfortunate accident that cost him his life, fell asleep at the wheel and crashed into a gas station when Overstreet was just 13 months old. He never truly got to know his father, but he used that death as motivation, as a safety in Missouri when he was coached by Matt Eberflus as his defensive coordinator. Um, he then took that motivation to the coaching level uh, in 2015. There was quite the gap between when he left the college level as a player to when he joined the coaching level. He was working with a company using his background as a graphic designer and with a bachelor's in fine arts. He joined a community college as his first coaching job, where he spent 2 seasons as a cornerback coach before moving on to another community college with Garden City. He spent 3 seasons there as the cornerback coach and defensive pass game coordinator before spending the 2017 season out of football. In 2018, he joined the Colts under Matt Eberflus as the defensive quality control coach before moving into the assistant defensive backs role in 2021. That's the same role he finds himself assuming in 2022 with the Chicago Bears. It'll be interesting to see who he will be working with on defensive backs in 2022 because that role has not yet been filled. Moving on to the offensive side of the ball, he also nabbed 2 coaches over there. One of his biggest hires is Tyke Tolbert. As we already reported, he hired Luke Getsy as the offensive coordinator, who previously served as the quarterback coach and passing game coordinator for the Packers. This is quite key because he's fairly new to play calling. Bringing in a guy like Tyke Tolbert, who has almost 30 years of coaching experience, including 22 years of his position group, wide receivers, um, just makes a ton of sense. Tolbert's been around. He's coached with many teams. From 2018 to 2021, he spent his time with the Giants, coaching under Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur, and he's bounced around several times before, and he knows many schemes. He adds passing game coordinator to his title in 2022, so it'll be interesting to see how he adapts to this new role. But considering he's got 22 seasons as a wide receiver coach and another 5 as a tight end coach, this seems like a very natural fit for him. He basically has worked with every position group that catches passes, so being a pass game coordinator, it just makes sense. The final hire that he was able to nab was Andrew Chinenko. I hope I didn't butcher that last name. He has been hired as the quarterback coach. He has had kind of an interesting run since joining coaching. He got his start in 2011 with Rutgers under head coach Greg Schiano, who then jumped to the NFL. Chinenko followed him to the NFL, and he ultimately stayed with Schiano until he was fired after the 2013 season. In 2014, he got his first crack at coaching quarterbacks with Mercyhurst, a college program that I've never heard of, to be completely honest. In 2015, he jumps back into the NFL, this time with Minnesota, handled quality control for 2 seasons before moving to help the O-line. This is when it gets really interesting. He spent the 2017 season as an assistant offensive line coach. Following the death of Tony Sperano in the 2018 season, he served as co-offensive line coach with Clancy Barone, who had come over via the Broncos after being fired there as a tight end coach slash offensive line coach. In 2019, he was replaced as the co-offensive line coach by Rick Dennison, yet another Broncos transfer who had come over along with Clint Kubiak, Gary Kubiak, and several other coaches from the Broncos coaching staff after Kubiak had stepped down. Chinenko, in this situation, shifted back to assistant offensive line coach, the position he held in 2017. He held this position for 2 more seasons he held that position for that season alone, and In 2020, jumped over to coaching wide receivers. In 2021, he was asked to move again, this time to quarterbacks. And in 2022, he will retain his quarterback role, this time with Chicago. He will oversee Justin Fields, who could pan out to be one of the best prospects drafted in the 2021 draft, depending on the coaching he receives. This should be one of his biggest challenges since joining the NFL, being that he handled a very veteran game manager type quarterback in Kirk Cousins in Minnesota. So there wasn't much reason for him to have to develop Kirk Cousins' game at all. Uh, Whereas in 2022, he will be focused on developing every part of Justin Fields' game to the NFL level, something that he's only spent one season trying to do in the first place. Should be interesting to see how Fields develops going forward. But with Getsy being a former quarterback coach, I think he'll be very hands-on when it comes to Fields. Moving on to San Francisco, they have not yet had any coaches leave, but with news that Mike McDaniels is now a finalist in Miami, Kyle Shanahan makes a preemptive move to bring in Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn is a former head coach that served with the Chargers from the shoot. I can't even remember at this point. I think it was 2018 to 2020 seasons when he was fired and joined Dan Campbell's staff as the 2021 offensive coordinator. He serves with Campbell for just one season before jumping to assistant head coach with San Francisco. The reason I think this is a preemptive hire is because, as I said, he has served as the offensive coordinator in Detroit last season. He is a very natural fit to the San Francisco offensive scheme, and being that they have no clear cut person to take over outside of Rich Scangarello as coordinator should McDaniel leave, bringing in Lynn makes a lot of sense. Lynn's got a ton of coaching experience. He's served as an assistant head coach for 4 seasons. He served as an offensive coordinator and interim head coach for Buffalo before moving on to the Chargers that gave him his first crack as a head coach. Last season, like I said, he served as an offensive coordinator. So he's done a little bit of everything on the offensive side of the ball, including run as a running back in this very scheme that he will teach in 2022. Um, he is a great hire for Kyle Shanahan, and I think that he will eventually fill the offensive coordinator role, whether it's this season or next when Mike McDaniel does get a shot as a head coach. It's only a matter of time. He's a part of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, which is quickly spurning head coaches around the league in Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, and now Nathaniel Hackett by extension. It will be interesting to see how this hire works out, but I have faith that um, Anthony Lynn is going to be a great coach for San Francisco, and he will help Shanahan's run game going forward with Elijah Mitchell and I believe Trey Sermon. Moving on to Buffalo. Buffalo, or sorry, not Buffalo. Moving on to the Giants. The Giants, sorry, who hired Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Brian Daboll as their head coach. It was a topic of speculation to see who he was going to hire as his offensive coordinator, and he nabs a very hot name from the Andy Reid coaching tree in Mike Kafka. Mike Kafka is a former quarterback himself that spent about 5 seasons bouncing around in the NFL before he finally retired and joined the coaching ranks with his alma mater, Northwestern, in 2016. He spent just one season in the college ranks before Andy Reid gave him a call and told him to come up to Kansas City and serve as his quarterback coach for the 2018-2019 seasons. Or sorry, for the 2017 season before moving into being a quarterback coach in the 2018-2019 season. In 2020, he added pass game coordinator duties to his title, and he was expected to be the next man to be the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs, assuming Eric Bieniemy got a head coach position for the 2022 season. However, before that can even happen, Daboll swoops in and hires Kafka as his offensive coordinator. It remains to be seen which one of them will call plays in 2022, but I think if I'm Daboll, I go ahead and give Kafka those duties, and I let him go ahead and take the reins, while I focus on my head coaching duties. His next big hire should be defensive coordinator. Dable's got some connections around the league with many good coaches on the defensive side of the ball, but I was hoping that he would be able to retain Patrick Graham, who is now our next coach on the list, who has been hired by the Raiders. Um, with that being said, we'll move on to speak about Patrick Graham. Patrick Graham is one of my favorite defensive coordinator candidates in this offseason. I think he's one of those guys that he's well on his way to being a head coach in this league. He's a former Bill Belichick assistant coach for the Patriots, and he got his start in coaching in the college game in 2002. He spent 8 seasons bouncing around before he joined the Patriots in 2009, where he stuck until the 2016 season when he was hired by the Giants as the defensive line coach. He had a connection with the Giants, and he wanted to return there for personal reasons. Despite that, he was let go after the 2017 season when he joined the Packers in 2018 as a linebacker coach and run game coordinator, though he spent just 1 season in that role. He was regarded highly by many former Patriots assistants that were now getting head coaching positions, and Brian Flores was the first to contact him for a defensive coordinator role, which he accepted for the 2019 season with Miami. However, he was a little bit closer to Joe Judge, who had just accepted the head coaching position for the 2020 season with the Giants, so Brian Flores graciously allowed him to take a lateral move to the Giants as the defensive coordinator we spent the last 2 seasons. Despite the fact that both of those men have been fired at this point, Graham finds himself with yet another former Patriots assistant in Josh McDaniels, who has taken his second job as a head coach with the Raiders. Patrick Graham, as I said before, is a great hire for Josh McDaniels. He's a guy who he can not have to worry about the defensive side of ball at all. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if he brings in Brian Flores, assuming Flores does not get a head coaching position elsewhere. Flores could serve as a assistant head coach and defensive senior assistant, something of that sort, because he likely will only be around for a season or 2 before he moves on to a head coaching position. Another guy that I still expect to be added to this staff is Joe Judge, although he might be a candidate to replace Josh McDaniels with the Patriots as the offensive coordinator. That might seem kind of strange, being that Judge is known for his coaching special teams, but there was reports that emerged following Josh McDaniels accepting and then denying the Colts position that Judge was the next in line as the offensive coordinator. And ultimately, following 2 more seasons as a special teams coordinator, he went ahead and got consideration as a head coach anyway, so it didn't matter for him to take that position. He has since been fired after 2 years as a head coach. That's where I think he needs to rehab his image a bit, and going to a team like the Raiders with an offensive-minded head coach like McDaniels as an offensive coordinator makes a lot of sense. He wouldn't be the one calling plays, but he'd be the one tasked with doing game day analysis as well as game planning for the following week. This would be a key role in developing his offensive acumen, and that would give him 2 sides of the ball that he is very familiar with in his pursuit of a head coaching position down the line. I think he's a couple seasons away from getting any more consideration as a head coach, but joining McDaniels could be exactly what he needs to add to his resume for that to work out for him once again. Moving on to Denver. Denver nabbed several coaches. We'll start with the most important man they hired, and that's Justin Alton. Justin Alton served as the tight end coach for the last couple seasons under Nathaniel Hackett with the Green Bay Packers. But prior to that, he had coached several different positions. He spent the 2007 season with Syracuse, barely preceding Nathaniel Hackett and Doug Maroney. In 2008, he jumped to the high school level, ironically, and served as an assistant head coach, an offensive coordinator, and offensive line coach from 2018 to 2015. In 2016, he joined the NFL once again. He joined the NFL for the first time with Dan Quinn and the Atlanta Falcons. In 2017, he moved on from being an intern to offensive assistant, a title he held for 2 seasons. In 2019, he was hired by the Packers as their tight end coach, a title he held until this season when he was hired as the offensive coordinator. He's only been coaching for about 15 seasons. He's a fairly new name to the NFL coaching level, being that he's only been in the NFL for about 6 years now. Um, there's no word yet as to who calls plays, but I expect that Nathaniel Hackett will have him serve as an offensive coordinator without the play calling duties, and Hackett will call the plays himself. It will be interesting to see exactly how this marriage works out, although being that they worked together in Green Bay together for several seasons, I expect it to be a harmonious relationship. Now, a more of an odd fit is Clint Kubiak. Now, Clint Kubiak obviously is a familiar name to the Denver fans. He is the son of Gary Kubiak, who has served for many years as a backup quarterback, offensive coordinator, and later head coach that won a Super Bowl with Denver. He also served as the head coach with Houston for many years. Now, ironically, Clint Kubiak is not the type of kid that rode on his father's coattails for his entire career. In fact, he got his start in coaching separately from his father. It wasn't one of those situations where his father hired him to be some sort of intern and worked his way up from there. He actually started on the Texas A&M staff in 2010, immediately after graduating college, following a career as a safety, when he attended CSU. For the 2010 and 2011 season, he served as quality control coach before moving to graduate assistant and inside wide receiver coach for 2012. Kind of odd that he only coached the inside wide receivers. Never heard of that before, but moving on anyway. In 2013, he worked for Minnesota for the first time, serving as a quality control coach once again. In 2015, he spent 1 season in Kansas as the wide receiver coach before jumping into the NFL once again. This was the first time he was hired by his father, who had got the head coaching position with Denver. He was hired as the offensive assistant before taking over quarterback coach duties in the 2017 season when Bill Musgrave was promoted to offensive coordinator. In 2019, he was let go along with Kubiak and the rest of his staff, and he moved on to Minnesota, where he served as a quarterback coach at first and then offensive coordinator in 2021. When Mike Zimmer was fired, he was released from his contract and allowed to seek other opportunities, which is why we find him in Denver as now the quarterback coach and pass game coordinator, which should help him earn consideration down the line as an offensive coordinator once again. They also got one more name, Butch Berry. This might be a controversial hire for Nathaniel Hackett, and let me explain why. Previously, Mike Munchak, a very respected former Hall of Fame player on the offensive line and very respected coach, so respected that he got a head coaching position as an offensive line coach previously, has been replaced, yes, by Butch Berry, who has 1 season as an assistant offensive line coach with the 49ers last year. This is not something I saw coming. I actually figured Munchak would be retained because that was the one coaching position that has been solid for Denver. We've watched tremendous progress from everybody on that offensive line, and to replace him, I feel, is kind of foolish. He was a great asset to the many coaches that he has served with before this, and he will be an asset to the next coach he serves under. But, needless to say, Hackett wanted somebody he was familiar with, and he spent the 2020 season with Berry in Green Bay as a senior analyst. So it only made sense that he was going to come to Denver as their offensive line coach, I guess. He got a start in coaching way back in 2003 with the Chippewas, where he spent 2 seasons. He bounced around the college game until 2015 and helped an offensive line block for a 1,000-yard season that helped Thomas Rawls get consideration as an NFL player the following year. In 2015, he joined the Buccaneers as an assistant offensive line coach for 3 seasons. Um, this was a totally different offensive scheme. That's why I didn't consider it when I mentioned the 1 year with San Francisco. San Francisco runs the exact same scheme that Hackett is expected to run in Denver, so that translates. His time with Buccaneers, I mean, yeah, it translates on us as offensive line coach, but in the scheme that he's running, it's going to be totally different. In 2019, he served as an offensive line coach for 1 season with the Miami Hurricanes. That was his only year as a offensive line coach. So it'll remain to be seen what kind of job he can do with the very young linemen Denver has to offer. With Garrett Bowles, Dalton Reisner, Quinn Miners, and Lloyd Cushenberry already needing help on that side of the ball, being that they're all within the first 4 seasons of their career, minus Bowles. There's also a big question mark at right tackle with several journeymen trying to fill the position in 2021. That will be his biggest duties in 2022 to find a consistent right tackle that Denver can lean on going forward. Uh, there have been a lot of moves. I guess I hadn't heard about a lot of these guys, and then when I started looking into the coordinators that had been hired, it was like name after name after name started popping up for each team. So I figured I would cover them all for you guys. Um, the thing that really struck me was Anthony Lynn joining the 49ers. That is a huge hire by the 49ers. Um, Getting a guy with his kind of experience on the offensive side of the ball to most likely replace Mike McDaniel should he get a head coaching position is one of those moves that a very smart coaching and GM staff makes to prevent drop off on the offensive side of the ball. Shanahan has been able to focus on being a head coach because he's had trusted assistants like Mike McDaniel and Mike LaFleur and previously Matt LaFleur underneath him. Um, Yet moving on in 2022, there may have been a hole there had he not gone out and gotten Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn is the type of guy that can jump into that position right away, and he just strikes me as a very intelligent uh, offensive coach. He's coached in many different schemes. He's played in many different schemes, so he knows how to attack a defense. I always thought he was a great head coach for the Chargers, and just didn't get the chance to really develop the squad, despite the fact that he actually looked pretty good in 2020 with Justin Herbert behind center. Um, Despite all that, he finds himself as the assistant head coach to Kyle Shanahan now, which is a good position to be in if you're looking to find another head coaching position down the line, which I assume Lynn is. It's a lot better position to be in than Detroit was. It remains to be seen who Detroit fills their offensive coordinator position with, but my vote is going for Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley really needs that on his resume in order to get consideration as a head coach down the line, which I think he deserves. He spent many years in Philadelphia as a coach, and there was a reason why he was retained through many head coaches. He's a great coach at what he does. Now he needs a chance to call an offense and make it his own. So a team like Detroit should look into him. They're going to need a strong run game to support whatever player steps in at quarterback, whether it's get Goff again in 2022, a rookie, or another veteran that they bring in via free agency or trade. Whoever it might be, like I said, Deuce Staley deserves a shot, so I hope you're listening, Dan Campbell. Promote that man. Um, that's all I've got to say on the coaching hires for now, although names are flooding in fast, so I'm probably going to be doing another video probably later on this week. Stay tuned for my video regarding Kevin O'Connell, who is expected to be named the head coach of the Vikings going forward. as well as my episode 4 USFL head coach breakdown, which will involve the Philadelphia Stars' Bart Andrews. Um, Also, I would like to announce a partnership with Seat Geek. They have finally approved me to be one of their affiliate marketers, and if you guys are familiar with SeatGeek, they're a great app to go on and find great deals on tickets. They provide a grading system from where you're sitting versus the price you're paying, and it really makes it just super easy to find the best deal possible. I've used it in the past prior to ever even attempting to be a marketer for them, and I was a big fan. That's why when I jumped into the sports thing, the first thing I did was contact them to be a marketer. Their website is super easy to use, and it's the only place I'll go for third-party tickets. It protects the buyer, it protects the seller, and most of all, it gets you a good deal on both sides. So if you are a fan of SeatGeek like I am, and you're going to any live events in the near future, use my code SamShady to save 20 bucks on any purchase you might make. Obviously, I get a little bit of a kickback, so I would appreciate anything and everything that you guys can do to support me and this channel. That income that comes from them will be going right back to making better content for you guys in the future. I hope you're enjoying what I'm bringing to the table so far, and I will continue to hopefully provide great content in the future. Once again, thank you for your support. Drop a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about these guys, and who you think will be filling the positions that are now vacant on the other teams that these guys are coming from. I'm really interested to hear all of your thoughts. Comment below. Have a good one.